Now mai, haere mai, and welcome to our Facebook Live about air quality in Hawke's Bay. This evening we have a couple of distinguished guests with us. Jerf van Beek, Councillor and Deputy Chair of the Regional Council, welcome.
Evening, Mike.
And Dr. Kathleen Kozyniak, Team Leader for Air and Land Science at the Council, welcome.
Evening.
Some brief housekeeping before we get underway. We welcome questions for our guests in the chat area of this Facebook Live. We'll try and answer as many as we can. And any questions we can't get to this evening, we will answer within 24 hours of this broadcast ending. So if you ask a question that doesn't get answered tonight, please stop back and check on the post tomorrow. Right, well, let's crack into it. Let's start with you, Kathleen. What is air quality and why is it so important?
Air quality is the level of pollutants in the air, or hopefully lack of pollutants. And given that we're all breathing thousands of litres of air each day, I think the estimates are something between 8,000 and 11,000 litres, it should be of concern to everyone and is really important because air pollution does have health impacts. People can go to the World Health Organisation website and see some of the impacts listed there. They include for short-term exposure things like aggravated asthma, an increase in respiratory infections and reduced lung function. Longer term exposure increases the risk to developing cancer, more chronic respiratory diseases, and also heart disease and stroke. And there's both indoor air quality and outdoor air quality. The council itself is more focused on outdoor air quality. And thankfully in our region, by and large, air quality is really very good. And I'm not tempted to wear a cycling mask when I'm biking around in Napier, and which is something I used to use in London when I was biking to and from work back in the 90s. But there are occasions, unfortunately, mainly during winter, within our urban areas where air pollution does exceed health standards. And it's mainly with respect to very fine particulates called PM10, which are smaller than 10 micrometres in diameter, and that's smaller than the width of a human hair. And, a main source of that in winter is residential home, using sort of burning wood for home heating, mainly because just of the numbers of people that are doing that.
Okay. And so this air quality that we monitor it around things called air sheds, and Napier and Hastings are both designated as air sheds. Can you tell us what is meant by the term air shed?
If you're familiar with the idea of a watershed, it's very much the same. It's about the flow of air or water being constrained by topographic features and meteorology. And so effectively our whole region, particularly with our Western Ranges there, is an air shed, but we can officially gazette kind of sub-air sheds for the purpose of managing in areas where we see a particular pollution problem, or in areas where there's potential for a problem to develop, and we sort of need to keep an eye on that.
So that would be for in Napier and Hastings, the urban areas with all that burning of wood for heating.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Jerf, is that why the designated areas called air sheds were set up, and sort of how we as a council get involved?
Yeah, well, so we are, by national policy, we're required to develop these air sheds. So these are areas where if outdoor burning would be happening, either by farmers or horticulturists, and once again, just for the information of those who are online, I'm a grower myself, and I've been involved for the last 40 years in burning diseased wood during redevelopment, but we also have farmers with windfall trees that need to be tidied up. So, and at the same time, lifestylers as well. Within the air sheds, we've actually got a large proportion of lifestylers close to the city boundary. And so it's actually very important from the 1st of May till the 30th of August that we actually activate these air sheets. In different times of the year, those air sheets mean nothing really to anyone because of what Kathleen just has explained. But during the winter times, when we actually have that air captured and the smoke actually won't be able to actually get out of our topographic area, it's very important that we actually make sure that in the area of the air sheets, and they actually have grown over time because we felt they weren't sufficient, burning is illegal. Even very good burning is illegal because we can't control as a council of where the smoke and the pollutants will go.
So you talked about air being trapped, and I understand that has something to do with a thing called an inversion layer, Kathleen. Can you tell us what is an inversion layer?
The inversion layer refers to the profile of temperature as you go up in height in the atmosphere. Now, normally you expect to see that temperature decreases the higher altitude that you go. But a temperature inversion is when that is the opposite, that it's actually warmer aloft than it is at the surface. The normal situation is better for air quality because you have the warm air at the surface, cold aloft, warmer is more, it's less dense than the cold air, more buoyant, so it can actually sort of rise and mix through the atmosphere and take the pollutants at our level away, essentially. But in the opposite, you've got cold air sitting at the surface and you've got warm air aloft, and essentially because that dense cold air will just sit there and not really move or do anything. So the pollutants we emit in that cold layer will effectively pretty much stay there and just get concentrated there at the level that we're breathing.
And we've probably all experienced that somewhere along the way. You've walked out into a cold, cool evening, you can see your breath, and there's smoke in the air, and it's not going anywhere.
And I noticed that temperature change because being on the top of a hill and biking down in the morning, you know, it's kind of warmish up where I, live, but coming down, I'm pretty much an ice block by the time I get to the bottom.
I know what you mean.
Pedal faster.
It doesn't help, trust me. Jerf, so what can we do to help maintain good air quality in Hawke's Bay, even on the days and nights when that weather conditions means we're heading into that inversion layer type territory?
Yeah, good question. And I think we're heading this way is where we actually find alternatives to burning. So we now have companies, contractors that chip. So they bring in the big chipping machines, and orchards get pulled out, actually gets taken to these machines, they get chipped, gets taken away either to Biorich or other organisations that actually do composting, or they use it for their own means. But also cutting trees down, mulching, because we have mulchers behind tractors. That is one form as well. There are firewood merchants who'd love to actually take some of the solid wood out and actually then dry it and then sell it the following winter, and that's what I do myself. And I love having a big pile of firewood, so I can just 2-3 years before I burn it, and it's the best wood you can burn, although I'm outside the airshed. So the next thing, if we have to burn, is making sure that it is dry, and if it can't be dry, pull the trees out as early as possible, or trim your hedges or whatever you need to do. Let it dry long enough, and if you then have to burn, make sure you use good practice. So watch the weather forecast. If there is a strong breeze, away from the airshed, away from the community, neighbours, and make sure that actually that's the whole day long. The worst thing you can do is, it's looking pretty good, you hold your finger up and it's all go towards the ranges, and as soon as you strike the match, it goes the other way, you know? That's the worst thing you can do. Yeah. So I think it's really important that we also choose the conditions when we burn, which is really if we have to burn. And I think we're talking about illegal burning, but even legal burning, you have outside the airshed, you have an obligation to those who live in the community.
Sure, good point. So Kathleen, what sort of heating is best for maintaining good air quality?
Well, pretty much the air pollutants are generally products of combustion. So, ideally, if you can get away from combustion, so something like a heat pump is really kind of the ideal. But if you are using a wood burner, that you make sure that it is to, you know, the required standards. Some of the old wood burners we've been phasing out because they have higher emissions. Even better still is the latest technology, which is the ultra low emission burners, which, you know, as things improve, the emissions just keep coming down with those newer technologies.
Okay, and I see we have our first question in. This person says, I have a neighbour who burns something chemical to get his fire going. What are the things I can do to stop him from doing so? What rules do you have in place? So I assume this is someone who's using a petroleum product on something and causing fumes. I believe, and we'll give this number at the end as well, but I believe the thing to do would be to call the pollution hotline. That number is 0800 1088 38. So 0800 1088 38, and we have compliance officers whose job it is to go out and check on these things.
Yeah, and may I add, if somebody who burn, whether it's your neighbour or whether it's a good mate, if they need to use petrol-based or diesel-based chemicals to actually get their fire going, there is already a problem there. Okay, that should never happen. If you've got good dry conditions and good dry wood, and you've got a little bit of a breeze, because that's the blowing that you would do on your campfire. It's the same with a large fire as well. You wouldn't have to use that, because it will. You'll find paper and cardboard and some kindling and some dry branches, and it will just burn. Yeah. So that's already a first sign. So maybe burning at the wrong time is part of it as well. So I would say first thing is actually you talk to your neighbour. If you can't, then you maybe have to just ring the hotline.
Yep. Okay, good. So Jerf, moving on to other things sort of somewhat related. The rules say that barbecues are okay, but does a grill on an outdoor fire count as a barbecue?
I would say not, unless it's actually. We used to have, as we have talked before, is incinerators, and incinerators used to burn everything, and I've been guilty of that myself. I even used to smoke in aeroplanes, but we don't do that anymore. So generally, if there's a big fire and you have to put a grill on it just to try to get yourself out of a fine from the compliance officer, that's generally not a good case. So I would say barbecuing happens in wintertime. There may be just a transportable one. Generally, gas is being used. There'll be very few that actually will use the trick of actually using a grate on an outdoor fire trying to barbecue.
Yeah. Although people on a beach sometimes try and get away with it too, which is, when there's an onshore breeze, it's perhaps not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, we allow on the beach at Matariki that actually we allow fires. And once again, the advice there is make sure it's very dry wood, because even if it's a smaller fire and you have your whānau and your matariki around you, you don't want them to breathe in salt-laden smoke or any smoke. So once again, you have to be careful there as well.
Or picking up a piece of wood that's possibly been treated too. That's another. No, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, and so Jerf, what about the outdoor fire ban? Does it only apply during daylight hours?
No, it's actually 24/7, and that's actually very important, because as that air gets colder at night, the smoke will actually be lower and actually won't even rise. It will just travel across the land. And so that's something definite that you can't do. And we, in our guidance, Hawke's Bay Fruit Growers Association has developed a guidance with the TA, Hastings District Council, Napier City Council, and us, the Hawke's Bay Region Council. And we're saying sort of about 4:30, 5 o'clock, we really stop feeding our fires. Whether it's with diggers or front-end loaders or whatever form we have to load fires, we stop doing that. Let it burn down to hot coals, and in the morning just rake it up again, and it will start again. There's no point that you have to go again at 11 o'clock at night and actually feed your fire. If you've got a good fire going, it's not necessary, and if you've got a bad fire going, you shouldn't have started to start with.
Yeah. And Kathleen, what else? We've talked a lot about smoke and combustion, affecting air quality. What else can affect air quality?
Well, one thing I will mention, because I did talk about particulates, but other pollutants are the gaseous pollutants like nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, ozone, sulfur dioxide. So they're more associated with vehicles or industrial practices. But at a basic level, air quality is about what we're emitting and how quickly it dispersed. And we've already talked a bit about the influence of weather on that. But just I'm thinking ahead because we're looking at El Nino event developing, and that can reduce rainfall for the region and dry us out. And so weather can also help kind of make the problem worse by things like, windy conditions on bare, dry soil, particularly around when people are cultivating. It can throw dust up in the air, and that can be a problem too. It can also, drive conditions that are conducive to, bushfires establishing and spreading. Additionally, we get some natural sources like pollen, sea salt. We live right next door to the volcanic plateau, so if that erupts, we'll get all sorts of emissions from that. We can even, based on good weather conditions or the right weather conditions, see Australian particulates from Australian bushfires or dust storms. And probably the last thing that hasn't also been mentioned is odour. That's definitely an air quality problem too, and one we get quite a few complaints about. Some odours are more tolerable than others. When I was living in Wellington, I lived very near a bread making factory, and I rather loved that odour. But then there are others, and particularly if you're day after day exposed to it, they can, they're quite nauseating and can make you feel really quite ill.
So we've talked about some things there, particularly the volcanoes and lots of things that are out of our control, but clearly there are things like burning wood that are in our control. Perhaps each of you can sort of talk about one or two or three things that you really want people to take away from this session.
Yeah, what I've mentioned before is that just for people to be aware that air pollution does impact your health and those around you. So to be conscious of that sort of tagline of we breathe what you burn, and to be, if you are burning, to be considerate of your neighbours and to only be, using the paper and the really dry, untreated wood.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's actually it's a very good point that we maybe haven't laboured enough, is that untreated wood, so unpainted, untreated wood, that's the only thing we really can burn, and paper and cardboard. So there's lots of other rubbish products that we may have to dispose of that have to go into a landfill or into recycle, but definitely not on a wood fire. And I believe if burning needs to happen, it needs to be done in the right conditions, and it needs to be very dry wood to actually really work well. And definitely in the airshed can't happen. And also, I really would like to reach out to lifestylers who are not as connected as those connected to Federated Farmers or the fruit grower organisations that we have. The lifestylers who often are weekend warriors. Saturday morning they cut the hedge or whatever they cut, and it goes onto a pile, and in the afternoon it needs to be tidy because the mother-in-law comes on Sunday, so we need to tidy up, So it gets burned, and that really creates a lot of smoke. So anything that creates smoke, think again. It's not a good thing.
Yeah. And I do encourage people to go outside and, when they've got their wood burner going, look at their chimney and see whether or not there's some smoke there. 'Cause, you do get a bit at startup, but if it's going well, it should just be a heat shimmer and no smoke.
Okay.
And that's the same for a large outside smoke burn pile. When we do redevelopment or burning, it never really should create a lot of smoke at all. Maybe it start up, maybe the first load up, but then it should be a shimmer. And some of them, I've wondered, you know, the next door neighbour is burning again, and I look and I can't see a thing. They're so good at it. They know how to, and they've got good contractors working for them. So once again, I would like to point out that those who actually have to burn at a large scale to redevelop their orchards, because that's the only way you're allowed to do that, for that reason, make sure you've got a good contractor working for you, and they will give you the way how they burn, and you'll identify whether they're good or not. And I also want to do another plug, not too much to do with burning, but the air quality is with El Nino coming. It's going to be a bit warmer. Maybe we should just ditch the car and actually use our bikes, because if you look at the stats, it's actually the pollution that comes out of tailpipes that actually kills people the most. Not that I'm talking outdoor burning as up. It actually can be really bad, you know, and we heard about the situation and the diseases that can be created from it and the health effects. But I think, you know, ditch the car, jump on the bike, and you'll feel so much better.
Yeah, and your wallet will appreciate it too.
Absolutely. There we go.
Right.
Yeah, as a Dutchman, you know.
Yeah. So thanks for watching this evening, folks. And just a few sort of things to point out. If you want more information, there's plenty of it on our website. That's hbrc.govt.nz. And once you go there, in the little search area, you can plug in hashtags, either hashtag burning, hashtag air quality, or hashtag air. Any of those hashtags will take you to the air quality page. Of specific interest to any growers who might be watching is the burning special cases section, which is at the bottom of that page. And if your property is being affected by outdoor burning and you need to ring the pollution hotline, again, that number is 0800 108838. That's 0800 108838. We don't seem to have any more live questions, but if you think of any other questions after we go off air, feel free to drop them into the chat here and we'll get back to you within 24 hours. And so I'd just like to thank our guests for being here and leave everyone watching with this idea. There's a lot we can't do, but the one thing we don't want is we don't want to bring back having to wear these things, because if we don't do something about the air quality, this is what we're all going to look like. Ka kite.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.